Yeah, as I say, I'm Andy Murdoch. I'm a mapping specialist by background. I got sucked into the hoverfly recording world during lockdown when I was recording lots of stuff in my garden, and really it was the really amazing support given by the hoverflies, UK hoverflies Facebook, including Chris and Roger and everyone on the team there, that really sort of made me want to get more involved with the hoverfly side. And because I'm a mapping specialist, I have a software company called Maploom, which I run with Yanis Sophos. We volunteered to set up a recording platform for recording hoverflies, and really that's what I want to talk to you about today. And you know, we've been going for a while now, and I think we've been pretty static over the last few months. So Sue Kit asked me to give a presentation just to see if anyone else was interested in using it, and then also to try and sort of kick off some further development that we'd always planned, but with various commitments work-wise, it's not been possible to do. But I think we've evolved our platform quite considerably over the last few years, and I think now is the time. It's going to be much more easy for us to implement some of the changes that we'd hoped to do, which will allow you to do a lot more with your records. So the idea has always been for you to have access to the records, to make recording easy, but also so that you can then do stuff with them. And because, you know, I'm quite obviously a geographer and interested in mapping, one of those aspects is mapping, but there's also, you know, filtering and looking at different dashboards and interrogating the records that you hold. And then ultimately to be able to also get those records out of the database and across to the main hoverfly recording scheme database, so that they can then feed into the analysis that Roger and others do. So that's the idea. And so just to say, if you want to ask any questions, you can pop it in the chat, and there's a little icon down the bottom of the screen which you can add questions in as we go along, so you remember. And Jen, just a reminder that this is being recorded. So a bit of background. The idea of the talk will be to sort of give an overview of what we're going to cover. So we've got the background to the SyrphBoard, which I've kind of given you a little bit of already. Some of the functions, some of the benefits to both you and the hoverfly recording scheme of using the platform, and the fact that we're going to talk a little bit about new version and features that will hopefully be implemented in the next few months and ongoing, really, which will add in some of those things that we've wanted to include for quite a while. I'll talk a little bit about the roadmap, and then we'll have a chance for questions as well at the end. So SyrphBoard was originally launched in March 2022. Since then, we've got about 75 users registered. Not all of them are very active, but some are extremely active. We've got about 80,000 records in the database so far, and 183 species, and that amounts to about 120,000 odd hoverflies have actually been recorded. And as I was saying earlier, the platform is all provided by my company Maploom, as a sort of social project, a community project. So we pay for all the platform and the hosting and whatnot. So that's a little shout out to Maploom and my colleague Yanis, who does all the clever stuff to make this happen. The existing version is version 1, and we basically developed this to replicate all of the spreadsheet functionality recording that existed already. So if you use a spreadsheet, then it has all of the ability to add the sorts of data that you fill in there for the standard template. We access the platform via Facebook, which I'll come back to in a while. But in addition to the sort of standard spreadsheet functionality, Roger was quite keen that we also were able to add nil returns. So when people were out looking but not necessarily finding stuff, and that was particularly related to when there was hot weather and also looking at time of day. So we add these additional items that aren't in the current spreadsheet, that just allowed for, if we wanted to do some coordinated activity on recording during hot spells, there was a mechanism to do that and to show where we were seeing hoverflies, but also where we weren't, and to try and link that with some additional variables like temperature and weather conditions, and also the time of day. In addition, we also wanted to make it easy to sort of look up species and not have errors and so on. So just like you've got the drop downs in the spreadsheet, there's various search functions and standard lists that we look through to avoid typos and things in species names, to ensure that when we enter a grid reference, it's accurate and it's based on either a map-based click or a site that already exists, and I'll come back to that. And then various other options to cert and export your records. So ultimately, these are your records. They're there for you to extract at any time. We're not trying to take them off you or anything. If you want to export them, you can hit the export button at any point and export everything that's in there for use in your own analysis. And I know people like Paul have done some really interesting stuff on their records that they post as Facebook posts and so on. And the other key thing is that it's backed up. So these are on servers which are replicated. So you know, if one server goes down, there's a second version that can just replace it. But we also have a nightly backup. So if anything disastrous goes wrong, or you know, the system were hacked or something like that, we would have a copy, would be able to recover any lost data with minimal sort of damage. So as I said, the idea is to make it easier for people to record hoverflies, and especially those who are recording regularly, to ensure we've got this validation, but also to add these additional benefits, which I've mentioned before, and to try and ensure that we get this flow through to the hoverfly recording scheme database. So that's the sort of standard dashboard that you land on, and you can see that your sessions, so your name and then the sessions are and the various records and things are summarized on a dashboard. So at the time of this screenshot, there was 53 species I had, 1,000 odd records, and then underneath that there's a breakdown, which you can also see. And then in terms of actually entering the records, we've got this very visual interface. So first thing you do is search for species, and there's some standard things. So like recent hoverflies that you've seen will be shown in here. If you clicked on the HRS top 20, that gives the most commonly recorded hoverflies, the top 20 most commonly recorded, or you can just start to search in the box, and then basically you just enter these tick boxes and just click on the buttons to fill out the records. So that's really helpful, because you can also include links to the comments, and you can hover over those later and see the comments. But also, when you've had to ask Chris or somebody for an ID verification, then you can also include a link to the Facebook page, and when you click on that, it will take you directly into Facebook and into the very relevant post. So it's just a nice way of sort of keeping track of that. And then if also later somebody queries the post, so when Roger comes to look at the final determination to get it across into the hoverfly recording scheme for something like Psiloteranthracyna, he probably would want to check that, and here, you know, you can see that he's able to link to the Facebook post that verified it, if he couldn't remember, which is highly likely given the volume of records that they deal with. Then there's also a facility for Roger and other sort of verifiers to actually do the final determination, so they can see each individual recorded records, and they can accept en masse all those that have a Facebook link and a determiner, and a known determiner from the list. So that might be Roger, Chris Allen, or Mike Chapman, or people like that who are recognized verifiers. They can also choose easy species and just basically accept all records of those, and then equally, if it's just to genus, then you can accept that en masse as well. And so that means that it's very easy for Roger to do that en masse, or if he wants to then go through the individual ones, he can click to accept and reject. So you won't see any of this, but this is available behind the scenes. Where you might see it is if we make more use of this messaging functionality, where, you know, the Roger or whoever it is could say, you know, are you confident with this? Can you provide more information? And that can all be done via the system. So we haven't really made much use of that, but it is available for use if possible, or if needed rather. So I'm just going to come out of the system now, and I'm going to move across and show you the actual platform. So I'll start with my dashboard. So here is a summary, and this is for all records, but it just shows you the current number of sessions I've had. A session is basically a day recording hoverflies at a particular location, or a period recorded at a particular location. The number of records, the counts, the number of species, and the number of sites, and then this is everybody else's. So you can see that how it compares to the total in the platform, and then equally you can look at any one particular species that you've recorded, and it starts to give you a summary. So this is just a very basic dashboard at the moment that just shows you that summary of records, and we can't click into this to expand, but as I'll explain later, we want to be able to do that. But what you can see straight away is those which are the more common. So obviously marmalade hoverfly is going to be coming out as one of the most seen, but equally Aristalis pertinax, etc. So just from looking at that, you can obviously get an interesting understanding of your records and how you've been recording. And then equally, I can also filter that. So, you know, I can look at a particular year. So I had some retro fitted records from 2021 while we were testing. So there's not a lot in that year. 2022, on the other hand, was quite a big year for my recording, and you know, you can see the breakdowns just on that filter. So we want to make more of that to be able to expand, to be able to do different visualizations. But you can start to see that once you get the data in one place and in this sort of interactive environment, it's very easy to kind of you know, interrogate the records and start to learn more about different things related to your areas of interest, you know, your locations. So so that's the summary. And then when it comes to adding new records, we'll just ignore this for now, but basically you can see in the records view, you can expand on any of these particular locations. And because I'm still on 2022, I've got a load of nil returns in there. But if we go to 2025, you can see basically I can click down the various locations. I can see the various items, so the species that were recorded, the number, the sex, the observation method, whether it was me who verified it or somebody else. In this case, that's that record for Chris. And then you can see it was at Hawthorn Flowers, and also that I took that specimen and it got it verified by Chris on the Facebook page. So all good. And then basically you go back to the platform, and that's true of any of the records going back. So again, we want this to make this a bit more easier, so we can sort them and find individual records. So if I was looking for, I don't know, a particular rare species or something, I could go back and find that more easily than we can at the moment. But at the moment, it's just chronological, and you can see the lists going back through time. So in order to add a new record, though, we click on the add view. So there's basically these tabs across the top. You won't see this one, it'll just be the three. And then you can choose a date. If you wanted to do time-based recording, you can pick a time, but we won't do that for now. So I'm going to pick today. It was mainly broken cloud when I looked. I didn't record the temperature, but I did record in my garden. Now, I previously defined this as an extent. So I can click on that. It will pull through the location. I've got the grid reference, and it's automatically populated the Vice County, so we don't get any errors. And then I can then start to record the species that I saw today. So I had a Xylota segnis at the window. I didn't take a photo of it. Fairly happy that I recognised it was a male, and I may just make a note that it was at the window, and it was then released into the garden again. So that would then add that to the list. If I saw a female as well, I could just add another one and click female. It will duplicate this. And equally, if it was also at the window or it was at a certain flower, you can fill down. So if you've seen lots of things at the same flower, you just hit that fill down button and it will populate all of the records below with the same value. You have to be a bit careful because you would overwrite all of the other records if you didn't want. Again, that's something we could improve over time so that you only fill down certain records. But yeah, then basically you just go through and pick out the things that you've seen. So assuming that it wasn't in the list, I could type Alt and it automatically come out with Episurface Boltiatus. So you don't even need to have the full name. It will find it for you. So then I've clicked on that. I've added another record. This time it was a female, and it was radish flowers, which had bolted, unfortunately, so I won't be getting any radish this year. My garden's a complete state at the minute anyway, but so you get the idea. It's relatively simple to add different records, and then if I wanted to get the Facebook link, you go to the Facebook and then you can just copy it like you do at the moment. So you take, I think you just click on the name there and in your records, obviously, but that will take the actual record, the specific link to that particular. I think it's the date actually. Sorry, not the. Just go back. It's the date here, and that will get the post link that you can then drop into the SyrphBoard here. Obviously, I haven't got a link there because I didn't verify anything, but I'll just remove that one as well. So yeah, that's it. That's how you add them in. And if I save that now, I'll add the other records for today later. But essentially, I've got that as a record to come back to. And then ultimately, when I'm ready and I'm happy, I can then submit that. And then it will be visible to the verifiers. So in theory, anything that I've submitted is available to be verified at the time. And we haven't actually worked and used it like that because of we've been trying to verify en masse, but in theory, it could be done so you could get an up-to-date picture if everybody was submitting their records as they entered them. Then you'd get a live picture as you do currently from the extraction of Facebook records. So I'm going to stop there. That's the existing set. I don't think I've missed anything, but we can always come back if I have. And I'm just going to pop back into the presentation and swap these back over. So I guess the question is, why would you use SyrphBoard? There's obviously other recording platforms out there, like iRecord and iNaturalist, and there's the spreadsheet, obviously, and people submitting via Facebook. And really, this kind of breaks down into two. So there's benefits to you in terms of you've been able to store your records securely online and still have access to them, so you can interrogate them and play with them. You've got these extra data entry checks that will reduce errors. You can save your own sites, you can export your data at any time, and then obviously you've got these various links out to Facebook and so on to kind of connect all of the verifications that you've had done. But really the benefits will come in the new features that I'll explain in a minute. But also there's quite a lot of benefits to the hoverfly recording scheme. You've seen the effort that the guys put into verifying records, especially at this time of year when there's a large number of hoverflies being submitted for IDs. And obviously, once people get more familiar with species, then it takes some of the pressure off by people recording them themselves in SyrphBoard. If you need to get a verification still, obviously you do, and you'll still see people like Paul and myself posting, even though for ID support, even though we're very familiar with some of the other species now, having been doing it a few years. So that would take some of the pressure off the data extraction team because they're not having to view those posts and make identifications unnecessarily. The other benefit is that these data can be verified in bulk. So, as I showed before, Roger can accept large numbers of records for either trusted observers or for certain species, or where he knows they've already been checked on Facebook. So that just helps speed the whole thing up. And the system automatically exports out into standard format. So you can click the export button and it comes out in the standard hoverfly recording scheme template for you. But also when we come to verify, it comes out in a very similar format with some additional fields which just show that they've come from SyrphBoard and so on. And in the future, we hope to kind of make more use of that. So that's the benefits. And then coming on to the new version, as I said earlier, we've migrated our own software since we first created SyrphBoard into a much more sort of standard set of tools. We initially started out, we were building lots of different applications. We've now consolidated onto a kind of a standard sort of set of functionality that we think we can reuse in lots of different ways, and it makes it much more efficient for us to record. And there's several things we want to try and improve. So like the constant issue, we've not had that many bugs with SyrphBoard. It's a fairly simple system, but the main bugbear has been this link with Facebook to sort of get the login. So you use your Facebook ID and your login, Facebook login to log in, but it's always asking us to verify things and to make checks and things, and it's just not easy to keep on top of all the time. So we want to remove that. So you just use a simple username and password, and that way we want to hopefully remove a lot of that uncertainty and the downtime that we've been getting, which is completely out of our control. The other thing we want to do is to try to change the way we have sessions, and I'll come back to that in a bit more detail shortly. We also want to support early stages recording. So, you know, there's a large number of people who record the rearing and also, you know, early stages in terms of tracking progress and where they've reared them, you know, being able to work out what the final outcome was it successful, etc. So we want to support that. There's been several requests to add photos to records so that you can keep a photo, and again that might support where there's any challenges to ID, so we're looking at that. But mainly it's about improving the dashboards and filtering of records, because we know that people want to do stuff with their data and to sort of view it in different ways. And then obviously, because we are mapping specialists, we want to add mapping capability and also mobile data capture capability. So that's the sort of main thing. So I was talking about these sessions. So we originally developed this concept of a session to be able to record the species that are at a location on a particular day. And the idea was that you didn't have to enter that information several times. So if you think about your spreadsheet, you have to duplicate the column that says, you know, my garden, my garden, my garden, even though you might be recording all day in your garden. This was designed to mean that you only entered that once. You know, I'm recording in my garden today, and this is what I saw, and it would just removes the need to do that. But what we also did was allow the ability to have time-based entry as well. So I'm recording my garden during these time slots. And so there was an example where we were looking at hot weather and hoverfly numbers, and we used SyrphBoard to kind of record in these time boxes, but we were still able to export out for the hoverfly recording scheme where, you know, what a lot of these would be considered duplicates. They were all removed in terms of the final submission to the hoverfly recording scheme. So while that was really useful, and it was one of the reasons that SyrphBoard was designed to capture those nil returns and to capture those time-based elements, in practice not many people have been using it, and we probably need to look at that again. But what we were thinking was we can still support that functionality, but in a way that means that we actually have a lot more flexibility by divorcing the records from the session. So the idea is that we would, if you wanted to record in time-based way, or you wanted to have a particular session, you could assign those either with a start and stop recording, start a session, stop a session, or we could say any records in this grid square or within this certain area would be considered a single session if it was recorded on the same day. What we don't need to do is define that up front. And what we're thinking is this will be particularly useful for mobile recording, because you'll literally just be able to take a capture of a point location and then use that to then generate the sessions later. So I can aggregate to any spatial scale or any temporal scale. So if I want to preserve the sensitivity of a species, if it's something like Calyptrobola, where you don't necessarily want to be giving away the precise grid references, then you can aggregate to a higher level to make it a cruder thing. Or if I want to say, well, in the morning I was doing a particular area, then you could just group all of the morning sessions together. So we're going to come up with a new way of doing that, but you'll still be able to record in a way that allows you to group and not duplicate loads of entries, because it just wastes a lot of time. And so, yeah, the other thing was about this ability to add photos, so as evidence, but to use in analysis also, so we potentially could show it alongside certain dashboards, or you could look for pictures of a certain species and pull those back. We'd probably reduce the resolution and probably the number of photos allowed, because the storage costs of adding all these photos could get quite large. So we need to have a look at what exactly we can support there, but several people have asked for it. The other thing was on the early stages recording, and I think Jeff's on the call, but essentially what we want to be able to do here is take the information that the guys are already recording in a spreadsheet and just give them a platform and a set of functionality that makes that easier, so that if you've got 15 larvae that then turn into pupae and then emerge or not, they'll be able to track the progress of those and to start to use that in analysis later. It's just at the moment that's all done in a spreadsheet individually, and perhaps we can add something quite easily to the platform that would support that the tracking of that development through time, so that people can see what the outcomes are and to analyze it for the various research that people are doing. So that's we're going to sort of work with Jeff and the larvae people to try and work out how that works, and to develop something that's going to meet their needs. But ultimately we also want to enhance the dashboard to something a bit more like this, where you've got pie charts and interactivity. You can look at the phenology of an individual species. You could click on the map, look at first and last dates of records. And then for me, where I record at specific sites on behalf of Woodland Trust or Eastleigh Borough Council, it'd be really helpful to be able to pull back records for specific sites that I've already tagged. So that would be allow you to generate species lists and information by year. So we kind of wanted to do this before, but we never finally got round to it. But the idea would be that you can sort of start to report these things over time. And I think there's a lot more we can do on the analysis and filters. So at the moment you can just see these, but it would be very easy to add a sort under the new software. This is one of the reasons we haven't been able to do stuff, because it's quite bespoke, this code. But yeah, to be able to sort by alphabetical order, or the number of records, or the count, or the dates. We know that we can do interactive mapping, because that's our bread and butter, and obviously being able to show where the sites are that certain things have been seen. This gets more interesting, I think, once you get the whole of the hoverfly recording scheme database into the system, because you could then start to compare, where to go and look for things, or what you're seeing compared to what else is out there. We've also got a number of other layers that you could potentially draw in, which we use for targeting in the Queen Forest Hoverfly project. So, you could have things like ancient woodland, you can have LiDAR data, in ancient tree inventories, habitats, soils, whatever you like, we can add that in. And again, if you're looking for a particular species, or you want to sort of understand a bit more about the sites that you're going to be visiting, or already are visiting, then there's a lot of layers that we can make available there. And recently we also worked on a project to track bud burst in UK vines. So these are different wine varieties, and essentially it, there was a mobile app, a bit like this, where you basically click a few buttons, and the idea was that the results came into a central location, and you can start to see how you can track the phenology of that bud burst. But equally, that could be something like a hoverfly that was particularly seasonal, like our green forest hoverfly, the Calyptrobella speciosa, is in a sort of 6-week window. You'd be able to sort of track that and see how that might shift different years depending on the climate. But initially, what we want to do is just allow you to be able to filter where you've seen things and filter based on time and so on. And if we can get it right, we reckon we can create a mobile version of SyrphBoard, so that if you're the sort of person who goes out and records on a walk, then you can just get the GPS location, and once it falls below a certain accuracy threshold, I think ours is currently set at 35, but you can make it tighter, then you can record specific information. So this is one we trialed last year, which was just a very generic recording thing, but this year we've been using it in anger in the Green Forest Hoverfly project, again as a trial, but it's actually working really well. It's going offline even as well with no mobile signal, being able to capture stuff, not lose it, and then get back to the office and upload it. And here we've been able to sort of record the locations of sightings and also various other information. So once you start to pull it all together into a common platform where we've already got functionality, then we can start to do some really interesting things with your records and share that back. We've also been thinking about the branding and just the sort of look and feel. And I think the Hoverfly recording scheme's got a new logo. We're still using the old one. We're obviously the thing is powered by Maploom, but it's really for the Hoverfly recording scheme, this platform. So we want to make it look and feel like that. We've bought a domain, so we can put it on any of those domains, so it becomes a specific website. And we also have in place for our wider customer base a support tool that allows us to track issues and so on, so we can professionalize the way that works. So if you've got any issues, we can report them, or if you've got requests, we can do those. And then we've also been experimenting with logos. So the concept of SyrphBoard came up, or was devised by Stephen Suttill, I think, and I still owe him a pint for that. But the idea of a logo, just to make it again a bit more professional, I think is something we've been exploring. So if any of you are artistic, then that might be something we can get involved in. So in summary, you can use SyrphBoard 1 now. It's been around for 3 years already. It's very stable, I think, apart from this Facebook login, and it should be a lot easier than using a spreadsheet. We'll be continuing to make improvements, though, as I said, and adding these new features as we migrate to version 2. And I think that people are really going to start to see a benefit. And apologies that we've not really been able to progress it as we wanted to previously, but I think now we're in a much stronger position with the platform consolidating into this core set of functionality that can be easily redeployed on different projects. I think we'll be able to implement it much better, and the whole thing will be a lot more flexible and will give a lot more functionality and richness to the records that you're collecting. So we're going to come up with a timeline for how that migration will happen. We'll share that via the SyrphBoard site itself, but also on the Facebook page. And I think what we're going to do is initially prioritize the major new features, such as the filtering in the map and this new sort of larval recording, and then we'll work on the sort of other elements that we know we want to include. So that's it from me for now. I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any, and just to say thank you very much to everyone who's provided feedback and who's used the system. it really has helped, I think, us develop where we've got to now, and I think we're in a very strong place to move forward. So yeah, I'll shut up now, but if anyone's got any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Hi, Andy. Can I make a few points, please?
Yes, of course, Trevor, please go.
Referring to the current way of entering, which might be able to be changed in future modifications. There's a couple of things that I find a bit annoying.
Okay.
On the recent sightings list, is it possible to make those alphabetical? Because this, every time you go on it, they change around where everything's gone, and you're searching around for. It's sometimes actually easy just to put in 3 letters of the species you want in, to be honest. But if it was alphabetical, at least you'd have a better chance of quickly finding what you've got. And I don't know whether it would be possible to increase the number on there, because quite often I find that what I'm looking for isn't there, if you know what I mean. That's one thing. Another thing is when you're down at the bottom there and you save the information you've put in, would it be possible for the site to return back to the top of the page automatically, which it doesn't at the moment, so you've got to constantly keep going up. And the date, if I'm inputting several areas, every time I go back up to add a record, the date goes back to today's date, instead of being on the date for the date that I'm trying to record. Would that possible? Is that something that might change when you alter the system anyway?
Yeah, definitely. I think all of those things are sort of usability things which are really valuable, and I think obviously want to make it as simple to use as possible. So I've made a note of those. I guess ultimately it comes down to priorities, though. So I don't necessarily want to be the person to set those priorities. I think you're the user base. You should determine what you want to see. So what I think we'll do as part of this process is kind of put out a list of things we're planning to do, and get people to maybe suggest which ones they would vote up or down the list, and then we'll focus on the ones that are most important. But before we even get to that point, we've got quite a big job. Well, not a big job, but it's a significant job to move the data on to the new platform and make sure everything's stable, and then we'll work out what we need to tackle. But if there's things that are annoying, yeah, definitely we want to try and get those. And I know that from my own experience, there's some things that I would like to change as well, in terms of, just being able to, once you've submitted, being able to drill into the record again and things like that, which, are only possible if you then export, which doesn't seem right. It's just there's a big list, and we're working full time as well. So it's kind of a balance between what we can achieve and so on.
Yeah. It's working pretty well for me. I do keep a separate spreadsheet of first sightings and hyperlink those to the picture of the insect, which I find quite useful when I'm looking back over years to see what the time system is when I'm likely to see a certain species, etc. But it looks like a very good move forward in what you're suggesting. Only one other thing, I'm sorry if I'm being awkward. Would it be possible to incorporate maybe deleting your sites, or altering? I've altered some names on my sites because I've initially put them in wrong, if you know what I mean. But you can't go back and actually delete that, so you then put in a new name for the same site, but the old site's still there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think again that's something that other people have said as well, and I think Paul, you were saying about being able to sort of navigate those a bit easier as well, weren't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that's something. The only issue with changing site names is obviously at the moment they are tagged to the sort of record, so it would need to then feed through back to all the other records. So there's a process if we are going to do that. And I think that's probably why Yanis locked it down, because he didn't want multiple versions of site names and things.
Well, obviously the SD code doesn't change, but the name.
Yeah.
Of,
well, I think this is one of the reasons why we think going back to the sort of point-based recording. If you've got a just an individual record isolated, so it's got its coordinates. It doesn't necessarily need to have a site name because that could be applied retrospectively. And what we've seen in the New Forest, we've got a continuous patch of woodland, essentially forest, and there's different elements that are Churchmoor, Markash, Knightwood. They're all blurring into one. So your definition might be different to mine, and I might call it Wizard Wood, and someone else might call it, Witch's Wood or whatever. It's those kind of things are kind of better to use the actual data that is a coordinate, and then you can retrospectively decide how you want to aggregate to a site level and to say which one belongs to a site. But that's up to you anyway, because you're the one determining it. But I guess equally, what we don't want, or what would be good, is if I know you record at Brockholes, for example. I think if other people are recording there, then there would be defined site with limits and but does that exist? If it exists as an area, we can add it into the system, and you could define it that way. There's lots of ways of determining what a site is, but for now, what we're trying to do is allow some flexibility in that. So yeah, that would involve you being able to edit potentially, but also to kind of not place too much store on the site name, because it's the location that's the important thing, the actual point where you've recorded. But if it's a big grid reference, that's one thing. If it's down to as we're doing with the Calyptrobola stuff, we're down to trees, individual trees in the middle of nowhere. It's not easy always to find the best way to define what that site is. But I take the point. I've made some notes, and certainly the manipulation of those sites is not easy at the moment, because you just I've got quite a long list now, and I don't do that much recording compared to others. So if you're going all over the place, it would be quite unmanageable to scroll through all those. So again, maybe being able to search those or whatever. But I think that's something that we'll come up with a proposal and just get some views on. I think one of the things I didn't mention was it might be nice to have some sort of regular communique or like a forum where we can post stuff that when we want a bit of input from you guys, we can put it out. We may just do it through the existing messaging system, but we'll come up with some way of trying to get you to provide that input.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Any other questions or comments?
Andy, can I?
Yes, please.
Like Trevor, I've got a bit of a list down here.
That's good.
I'm with Trevor all the way. I know the problem
Yes.
with names of locations. Was it my imagination, or when you were showing your demonstration of how you pick a location, you just clicked on a square and the name came up automatically?
Yeah, shall I say that again, maybe?
Well, no, if it happened, I can't do that. I don't know if anybody else can, but when I click on a square, the grid reference comes up, but the location name doesn't. And I have to put that in.
I think I clicked on it first. I clicked on the location first and then the grid square.
Oh, right. Yeah. I've got an almighty mess. Well, I've got 300, 400 locations. Some have got past Yanis and have got 2 or 3 names, because if you only use them once a year, you forget you've used it in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can have a look at that behind the scenes and help with that if you
It
like.
would be nice if I could go to a square and click on it, and the single name I've used comes up, so I don't have to work out what it is. Because it won't obviously save unless I put a name in that name box as well as the grid reference.
Yeah. Okay. So you click on a square and know what site it's at, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be a problem with me at the moment because I've got several squares with 3 different names.
Yeah.
On the system, it comes up as a darker red, I think, if I've got more than one name for that location.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just it's a qualifier, isn't it? But if you're going to use it like I was suggesting, where I'm recording 4 of Woodland Trust woodlands in my area, then I'd want to be able to be sure that anything I pull back is for those and nothing else. Yeah, it's definitely something we need to improve, I think.
Okay, that's one. The comment boxes and the Facebook code boxes, they take up a lot of room on the screen. What I like to do, if I haven't recorded too many in a session, I know sessions are going, is quickly look at how many entries I've got up there and check it matches up with what I've written down rough on a piece of paper. Now, if I'm looking at all the text boxes open, then I can only see about 5 or 6 of the actual hoverfly entries. It would be really nice if there was a button which I could just say close all boxes.
So collapse all comments, essentially.
Close all comments or close all Facebook codes. So rather than closing them individually, so I can get more of the actual entries on my screen and count through them if there's not too many without scrolling, and check it with my notes and check I haven't missed anything out. That would be really good, because closing them individually one at a time gets to be a bit of a pain.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. I normally leave my export till the end of the year when it's a bit less busy and I can go through and check I haven't made any silly mistakes. And I've always made silly mistakes. Things like I've got SyrphBoard and I put it in as a male. So I haven't bothered to change the default from male to female. It would be really nice if the system allows it, that if you put in SyrphBoard photograph male, an automatic warning will come up that says you can't ID that without a specimen. And then I wouldn't make the mistake in the first place. And there's obviously half a dozen species where if you've got that warning that comes up and says, are you sure? Or it says, we normally need a specimen to be sure of this. That would save me making quite so many mistakes in inputting.
Yeah, that I think we've talked about that one before, haven't we? But set of rules. So again, I think probably we would need to come up with a draft list of those rules between us, and I would be grateful of your help with that. But then run it past Roger, Chris, and the rest of the verification team, just to show that we're covering off all those things. And obviously it'll evolve, but we can add rules as we go, and we do that routinely for lots of quality checking. So there's no reason why we couldn't create a pop-up that says when you try to submit and it's a male rubesii from a photo, that it's not going to be accepted. So to prompt the user to check again.
Well, I mean, even something like what iRecord does, when you put in a species that is a summer species and you put it in for November because you've hit the wrong button, it'll at least come up and say, are you really sure this doesn't fly in November? Something. I don't know we necessarily need that one, but there's certain things like the male female where one can be ID'd and the other can't. That would save me time in the long run.
Yeah, like Microdon mutabilis, Mimica and all that.
Just ones which are going to be plain wrong if you put the wrong thing in, rather than, it could be something seen outside the accepted season, and you could say, no, I'm sure about that, but at least a warning.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I think that was most of what I wanted to mention. As I say, my biggest problem is I've got so many locations. It's useful to have them, because if I've got some that are just on New Forest, I can press New Forest and it goes straight to where all the potential squares are. If I have to sort of scroll around trying to find the New Forest and then click a square, it is actually useful to have a general name.
But in that context, I've got a national park boundary for the New Forest, for example, in the Clipperbola and for other things that we could use to zoom to it. There's other ways of doing it.
Well, yeah, whatever.
And if we have a nature reserve, then we can use the boundary if we've got it. And so I think there's lots of smart things we can do there that might declutter as well the overall site list. But yeah, let's have a look at that. But if you wouldn't mind helping with the rules, and we can start that process now. We don't need to wait, because the more that's ready to go, we could, when we come to develop it, the better, really.
The only other thing I'll add is I'm really looking forward to being able to interrogate my own data a bit more.
Well, lucky you, you'll have more than most with the weather you've got in pool. You'll have more records than most of us to play with. But yeah, no,
having all those filters and geographical filters, it'll be really good.
I mean, I don't want to speak for Roger, but when we discussed this previously, one of the things he was really keen on was to give back to the recorders. So he didn't want all of the records just going into a black hole that they couldn't use, and so the platform allows, hopefully, the interrogation of your records. They're your records, they just happen to be shared with the hoverfly recording scheme, but ultimately you're spending the effort in the field and you want to get the most out of them, and as I say, I'd already intended to try and push that along quicker. I think what we realized, though, was because our platform was changing so much, we didn't want to invest wasted time working on a version that was ultimately going to be deprecated. So I think now that we've agreed to move it over to the new platform, all of those things become a lot more doable. And the bud burst thing we've done, for example, is great. You've got this mobile app, you go out in the field, you collect the data, but all dropped onto a map. We could use that across the community to track, like they do for bee fly or other species, if there was one that we thought was particularly suited to that. But equally, just that whole business of being able to record with a mobile app, it needs a lot of work still, but it's reliable now in terms of it works offline. It allows you to save a photo and various details in a structured way that could be used in the field as you're walking around, and you wouldn't need to worry about sessions or transcribing it later from the notes on your mobile or paper notes that you've taken or various photos. It also does allow you to upload a photo at the Clipperbola site and use the GPS coordinates of the photo to generate a record. So again, that's something we could support in SyrphBoard. So you could just throw a load of photos in and then base the record on the coordinates of that and the timings and all of the metadata that's in the photo, and then just add in the bits that aren't there automatically. So there's lots of potential. But we just need to get across into this new version to make it easier for ourselves, because obviously we don't have huge amounts of time to do this, even though I'm keen, obviously, because I'm into hoverflies. Yanis is amazing. He's not a hoverfly person, but he's hugely supportive of this project because he knows it's helping us as well understand how we can develop the platform more generally. So that's why we do it. And that's why we're supporting it. So I think hopefully you'll start to see some of that analytical stuff coming through.
Good. Thanks, Andy.
Excellent. Anybody else? Any more? No? Okay. Well, we can wrap it up there. As I say, I'll be in touch. And I'll be in touch with some people specifically, certainly Jeff Wilkinson I'm going to be talking to about the larval stages. So that would be good to sort of nail down exactly what we're doing there. But if anyone's into rearing or that sort of recording of early stages, that's something that's not well supported at the moment by the platform, but could be quite easily, I think. So yeah,
that'd be good, Andy. Be nice to get a screenshot of your proto form for larval rearing, so I can share that with the Facebook group and get other folks' input.
Yeah, I think that's probably not moved on much since we last talked about it. But I noticed that you'd sent some stuff recently, and And so yeah, maybe let me revisit that. But I think rather than me trying to come up with that form, it might be better to work through the process. So like you've explained that, you might go out and grab a load of leaves with certain larvae on, and you'll extract some, and you maybe keep them all, or you maybe identify a few to genus and then rear a few more. We just need to work through that process to work out how best it would be to record them. But ultimately, the idea is to generate sort of confirmed records, isn't it? And then to also give you the ability to then maybe write papers on, rearing success and parasitoids and all these other things, that weird and wonderful stuff that goes on in the early stages, which is, as we all know, the main bit of the hoverfly's life cycle. So it is really important. That's why we want to support that as well. But
no, that's great. Yeah, and I think the general feeling is that the comment field on iRecord or the column on the HRS spreadsheet has to do a lot of heavy lifting for a lot of even the minimum stuff you might want to information you want to extract from larval rearing. So I think anything that can spread that out into separate columns to make the information more accessible and easier to input would be very useful indeed. But it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate, so we'll be patient.
But it is one of the things that we want to do for sure. So again, we can get the workflows down for that sooner rather than later. If we've got a clear idea of what we're building, it's much quicker than going backwards and forwards. So I'm happy to iterate on that before we even get to the bit development of it. So do expect me to be in touch.
Okay, cool.
Excellent. All right. So I think we can wrap it up there unless there are any final thoughts or comments.
No, that's great. Thanks, Andy.
Okay, brilliant. Well, have a great week. I hope you have a successful weekend, and I'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Andy.
All the best.
Cheers,
Andy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye then.